All right, good afternoon, welcome back. We're going to go over electric car fires. A couple things to consider. When we did the registration for this, the thing filled up in about 48 hours, and it was a priority selection, and nobody in this room is under the rank of district chief. So when we go back to our departments, we're going to go back with a plan. We have to give our people that are in the fields, on the engines and ladders, a plan on what to do when they come across one of these things. When we developed our plan for the city of Brockton, we wanted to make it so that a lieutenant on an engine company rolls up to something and he has a pattern, a plan, a schematic, do what he's got to do. Some of these things aren't going to go well. Some of them are going to go well, right? But if at least we're working in a rational way, we're following the SOP, we're doing what we're supposed to do, we're keeping our people safe, right? So we got to give our people something to work with. So a couple things just to start right off. There's no universally accepted tactics. We have one place that's putting cars into roll-off dumpsters full of water. We have some places that are letting them burn. We have some places that are rolling them over with grip hoists and winches and jacks, and they're trying to apply water to the bottom. We have some material, some tools where the nozzle penetrates the battery case. We have other ones that don't. There's no universally accepted tactic for this. Plan on a long-term operation. If you have an electric car fire, you're going to be there a couple hours, regardless of which way this goes, whether it goes well or it goes bad. We're going to be there for a couple of hours. When you have one of these things, even if you get this thing put out fairly quickly, we have to stand by and babysit this thing for quite some time. So if you're the type of department that has to commit 4 or 5 people to an incident, you need to call a callback, then you need to call that callback. All right? We're going to be there for a while. As department leaders, chief officers, we have to plan on the relocation. Next week, when you're in the office, you should be making some phone calls to tow companies, your police department, and asking some questions. Who can accommodate the things I'm going to show you here, right? Also planning on relocation is who runs the tow operation in your community. We can't have a fire lieutenant in an argument with the patrolman about who's taking what car and where it's going. We have to have a plan that starts from the administration on down so that a fire lieutenant, a fire captain on the scene can dictate how this car is going to be towed and where it's going to be towed. And the police department runs that. So we got to work with our police departments on establishing how this thing's going to work out. And then where is it going to go? Work in a city. A lot of our tow companies dump cars right between 2 stackers because that's the vacant lot they bought and they dump cars there. You cannot tow an electric car there. So our department created a permit to store an electric car. To see the site, we have to see the containment area, find out where it's going to be. Control where these things are going. Not only for the stuff that was towed from within my community, but the stuff that was brought in from outside the community. Because the incident could be 2 towns away, and I got a call at 11 o'clock at night that Bridgewater was sending me a burned out electric car. I was like, great, that's wonderful. Putting it right in my district, right? Let's start at the basics. An accident. When we go to an accident with an electric vehicle, we have to be prepared for fire. We're taught our company officers, evaluate the car, right? Evaluate the mechanism of damage. Anybody who's been in EMS, right? We always talk about evaluate the mechanism of injury, right? Same thing. What's the mechanism of this damage? If we think that this car has been damaged anywhere where the battery cells are, we want a hose line in the street. We want to secure the vehicle. One of the things we learned was that if you put wheel chocks down, the torque of an electric car might go right over a wheel chock, right? So your wheel chocks may be ineffective. It might be better than nothing, but they might be ineffective. We bought a product called the emergency plug. You guys remember probably a year ago now, a FNY firefighter was working on a car, was up on 2 wheels, an accident. He was in the passenger door, the door was open, the car lurched forward, ran over his legs, broke his legs. Following that, a person in Europe took the video and created this thing called the emergency plug, and it's right here in the front of this car. The emergency plug mimics this car being plugged in to charge. So all it does is use the car's own computer system, essentially, to say, hey, I'm under charge. Every single plug port is in a different place. You see right here, it's right in the grill. You'll see a picture in a minute, it's right here. You have to figure out where they are. Some, they're in the rear tail. It looks like a tail light. You push it, the tail light opens, and you plug in there. You're just going to have to get used to where they are. It's universal. It has 3 connections. 1, 2, adapter. So it fits every type of electric connection that we have at this point. When you put this emergency plug in, it mimics that the car is being charged. Different manufacturers operate differently. Just by training and putting this thing in electric cars that we found around the city, some of them are put into neutral, some of them are put in park. The nice thing about the emergency plug is it has an LED light on it, and when you've taken control of the car, it lights up, you have control of the car. The problem is if the car stops and you put the emergency plug in, the car can stop rolling neutral. So I know I just said a minute ago that chocks may be ineffective, but you need to combine chocks with this. We talk to our guys also. We go to an unconscious person in a car, which we do all day long, right? If it's an electric vehicle, put that thing right in. Now if the person wakes up, hits the gas, the car is not going anywhere, right? So they're around. And again, evaluate the mechanism of damage. So this accident was like 3 days ago. The company officer called me on the policy. If you're a company officer and you have an EV accident, you call the shift commander. He sent me the picture. I said, it doesn't look like any area is impacted. What do you think? We talked it over. He was very comfortable that the battery area between the 4 wheels under the floor wasn't affected by the accident. So we let this car go as a normal tow, right? So whatever tow truck showed up took this car. But that was because we evaluated the mechanism of damage. And in our opinion, we didn't think that this car was going to catch fire in about 6 hours or 6 days. Completely different incident. This is a Tesla flying down the street, hit the curb and launched and landed inside that building. This is after the car was pulled out of the building. So again, if you're the company officer showing up to this and you went for a car accident, you need to call for your building fire response, whatever that is in your community. We all do it a little bit different, right? If that Tesla is inside that building, that battery compartment has been hit the curb, it hit a secondary curb at the grass line, and launched into a building.
Anyone knows Brockton? That's our special.
Every day. Some of the pager companies call the Brockton now. So, so when I look at this car, I'm concerned. I'm going to be concerned that this is going to be going to catch. I'm at this incident. I'm going to stretch a line to the first floor. I'm going to stretch a line to the side. I'm going to run this whole thing like this car is going to catch fire at any moment, right? So we need a whole, like we said, we're going to disable it. And we're going to evaluate that. In my opinion, this car can catch fire at any moment. Not only while we're removing it from the house, but while it's sitting here in the street, while it's on the tow truck, it gets to the tow lot. So again, we created that permit for storage of a damaged EV vehicle, right? The other thing to consider, if you have someone trapped in a car like this, you also have to have a concurrent operation for firefighting, even when there's no fire showing, because at any moment this thing can catch fire. And we also know that we can't put it out. So if we're in an extrication type operation, which this one wasn't, if you need more help, call for that help. Because when this car, during the extrication, this thing can catch fire. We've seen the batteries explode today and how rapid, how fast, how much damage that can be done. I was talking to a couple of the company officers in my group who do the extrications. I said, you got to start thinking about battlefield mentality here. Like, whereas sometimes you take the whole car apart around the person, and we're very careful about every move we make. If we have a vehicle and it's on fire, we have to go battlefield mentality. And it might not be pretty, but this person's got to come out. So, things to consider for your own departments and how you work. Some of you guys are showing up at a call with 2 or 3 people. Some of you are showing up with 26 people. Not one size fits all. But just keep in mind, if you show up to something like this, you should be considering fire, and you should be considering fire all the way through to the tow lot. So electric vehicle, extinguishment is with water. So this was a car I had recently. Guy was driving down the street, smashed a fire hydrant and a couple other cars while he was driving down the street. We arrived, you can see the fire underneath the car, smoke from the hood. Keep in mind, foam and fire extinguishers are ineffective. They don't have any positive effect on the firefighting operation. Attack line on the vehicle is normal. First due engine arrived, used an 1 3/4 line, knocked down most of the fire, and the fire appeared to be knocked down, and immediately placed what we purchased for our cooling nozzle underneath and under the battery of the car. So we had just purchased these. They were actually in the station, not even on the trucks. When the call came in, for some reason, the dispatcher actually got that it was an electric vehicle and told us that upon dispatch. The guys ran in the station, grabbed the nozzle, and brought it with them. We hadn't even put it on the truck yet, and we used it for our first night. So in this case here, we put the fire out like a standard car fire. This is a main road. I grabbed the police. I said, we're going to be here another hour at least after we put this thing out, because we're going to put this nozzle under the car, and we're going to let it flow for 45 minutes with no fire activity. 45 minutes with no fire activity, and then we're going to allow the tow to take the car. And by the way, I have a specification of what I want for a tow. I need a flatbed, and it has to go to a certain company, because we'd already determined which companies could take these. Had the large enough lots and the separations for these. The patrolman called the supervisor, and everything was all set. So no arguing in the street, no police versus fire, no upset tow companies. A couple of your other options are allow the vehicle to burn. So in this case here, allowing this vehicle to burn, we would have been there for a while, I think, right? And then submerge in the dumpster. So the submerging in the dumpster, the problem with submerging in the dumpster is what you gain today, you lose for weeks, right? So if you take a vehicle and you submerge it in a dumpster, fill the dumpster with water, if that water gets into that battery compartment, what have you just done to all those batteries? You've insulted them, right? The very thing that got us here in the first place, right? So if we submerge the car in the dumpster, that might be working good for me today. But once that dumpster or that car get to wherever you're going to take it and the water is drained out, it's now another 30 to 60 days that car has to sit isolated. And then we got to get all those batteries dried out before we find out if this thing's going to catch fire again. Now, cooling nozzle underneath on the battery. The number we had heard when we went through our training was 45 minutes of no fire activity. You could go 50, you could go 30. Just think of CPR, right? So if we start doing CPR on somebody and you stop to move them, you lose that pressure. You lose that effectiveness of the CPR. Well, all I'm trying to do with this nozzle here, I'm not going to put that lithium-ion battery out. If it's in thermal runaway, it's in thermal runaway. I'm not stopping it. All I'm trying to do is stop propagation around it. So if I flow water for 15 minutes and shut it down, and that starts heating up again, I just lost all the progress I made for 15 minutes. And then if I turn it on for another 15 minutes, and I shut it down, and it starts overheating again, I just lost all the progress I made for the first 30 minutes. So again, as soon as we knocked this fire down, I just walked up to the police officers, we're going to be here another hour. Put the nozzle underneath, had all the guys take off their gear, we sat on the side of the road and waited. Once that hit 45 minutes, we started the next process. When you have an electric vehicle fire, you want to assess a plan, right? So we should go back to our departments and we should have a plan. Because this is not going to be over in 20 minutes. You really need a plan. You need tow companies. You need a place to go. You need a police escort to get there. You need to have an engine company follow it to the final location, right? So we need a plan. We need to anticipate water needs. Everybody's talking about tens of thousands of gallons of water to put these things out. Well, that's a real thing. That's actually what happens when these things catch fire, right? So we're going to anticipate our water needs. How are we going to do this? If I laid 1,000 feet of 4-inch, is that easier than bringing 15 engines in a cycle, right? That's a possibility. We have to anticipate a long-term operation. We're going to be here a while. And a tactical relocation. So I'm sure all of you guys have experienced this, but if we have a fire in a trash truck, we drive the trash truck to a parking lot and dump the trash, pull it apart, and put it out, right? We drive the trash truck with a fire in the back of it. So I've worked on a plan for my department that if Route 24, if I have a car fire on Route 24, I can't close that highway for 2 or 3 hours. It's unreasonable. So I talked to my tow company that has Route 24. They have the skid steers They bought a roll-off dumpster, an old used roll-off dumpster. It's not sealed or anything to hold water. And they're going to come in with a skid steer, put it in the dumpster, we'll cover it with a fire blanket, and we're going to drive it off the highway. Pretty aggressive. But so is closing Route 24 for 3 hours. Whether it works or not, whether we're actually successful in doing it or not, we've talked it out. I sat at the tow company. We talked about all the different ideas. And they're like, we'll do it. No problem. So why not, right? Because remember, even after you extinguish the fire, you're supposed to go another 45 minutes of no fire activity cooling that battery. That's a tough thing to do on a major highway. This car here is the one that DEP spoke about. This is the one in Norwell. This is after it was brought out and tens of thousands of gallons were used in the building, tens of thousands of gallons were used outside the building. By the end of the day, this fire car was completely consumed. This car catches fire again after this photo, okay? They were flying a Tesla engineer up from Philadelphia to handle this. By the time he got there was nothing left of the car, okay? So don't anticipate getting much help from the dealerships or whatever. And this was in their dealership. This happened in a Tesla dealership. So looking at this car right now, who would ever think that in a couple hours it's gone, completely consumed in fire? Okay, if it's garaged, extinguish your fire as always. We bought the fire blanket. I don't know if the fire blanket's going to put out a lithium-ion battery car fire, but I do know it might buy me time. I might be able to put the blanket over it and slide the nozzle underneath while I try to figure out what to do. And I'm talking like garage under a 5-story wood frame building, right? Or in a lower garage, or garage in a house, right? So we bought fire blankets and put them on our ladder companies. So if we have a car fire, the engine goes ahead and put water on it, the ladder company brings up the blanket. And if it's necessary, cover the car. Continue to apply water on the battery until it's ready to go outside. Somehow, some way, you're going to get this vehicle out from this underground garage or under building garage or house garage. Plan on a vehicle removal operation. Again, you call for help. An engine company putting water on it, you have a ladder company doing their thing, you have a whole other crew. Maybe it's the tow people, depending on where you are. Say, hey, I got to get that car out of there. Come up with a plan on how to get it out. As part of our identification of who can tow an electric car fire, we figured out the heights of our underground parking garages, and found out what tow companies have the smaller tow trucks that might be able to actually drive it and get it. But that's all been pre-planned. We know who we're calling now. So underground, under structure parking garages. We just saw the major fire in, I think it was London, where the parking garage actually collapsed. A concrete parking garage collapsed. I don't know what the vehicle was, but it just goes to show you the hazard of it. And then your residential garages. Okay, highway or major road, extinguish the visible fire, cover with the fire blanket, continue to apply water to the battery until ready to move, plan on a vehicle removal operation. If you look at the state police requirements to tow from a major highway, skid steers is on the list. You have to have a skid steer if you're gonna get that contract. So talk to your tow company that's in your community. Each one of us is gonna have to go back to our own tow companies and say, if I have an electric car fire on the highway, can you lift this thing up and get it out of here? Some companies might say, I don't want to do it. Some might say they will. Mine did. Move to an area with a water supply. If you're going to move it to where it's convenient for you, right? And then get that hot highway reopened. I had a propane truck rollover Memorial Day weekend and had 24 closed for 8 hours. It was awful. The traffic backup was across eastern Massachusetts. Say again? That's it, right? So we bought mechanics vehicle dollies for, right? So if I have a car fire in an underground garage or any garage, or even a parking space, and I want to move it, we bought mechanics vehicle dollies. You put these under the wheels, you pump them up, it lifts the car off the ground, and now you can manually push the car around. We can remove it from a parking spot, a garage, or from any exposed area. So our goal here, extinguish the fire as normal, get that undercarriage nozzle going, cover it with the blanket, talk to the tow guy, talk to the people who are going to move the car, have a plan where you're going, have a plan for firefighting, have a plan for protection, and get this thing out, right? The fire blanket. If you go to their website and you watch the videos, they extinguish fires with the fire blanket with no water. Will that work with lithium-ion batteries? I don't know. Never tried it. But my goal is exposure protection. Whether it extinguishes it or not, if it can buy me time, if it can buy me some space, that's the most important thing I'm looking for. And for our tow companies to get the permit to tow electric cars, they have to have blankets. So what we do is if we take this blanket and we cover the car and it gets towed and the blanket's damaged, they give us a new blanket, they build the insurance company, and they get themselves a new blanket. It's a process of cycle. So remember, secure the vehicle. This vehicle here, this is the guy here, when the car drives forward, it breaks his leg. Securing the vehicle, emergency plug at one incident. Again, it's on the driver's side fender. This one's in the front grille, and I've seen Teslas where it's in the rear tail light. Each manufacturer is going to be operating a little bit differently, and what the car does when this is in can be different. I think it was a Leaf that we tried. It put it in neutral. So if you're not shocked, the car's going to start rolling. Okay, so towing. Authority to determine a tow company. So when we go back to our departments, we got to talk to our police chiefs, our police counterparts, and say, what's your towing process? Do you have a towing contract? When is it going to get renewed? Because we want to add a paragraph in about towing electric cars and where they can tow them to. Have a plan, right? Because when we're on vacation and we're leaving the company, the captain in charge, he's got to figure this out. So we got to have a plan. Are they qualified to tow it? And are they going to bring it to an approved storage location? So this car here is being towed in the back of a flatbed. And of course, my video doesn't want to work. And it's on fire, right? I can guarantee he was towing this normal, it caught fire, and he's trying to offload the car right now. It's just a short 2-second clip that I have on social media. So this is what a car fire looks like after we're ready to have it towed. It's on the back of a flatbed. It's strapped down. It's got the fire blanket on it. The battery's been cooled for 45 minutes. I saw no signs of smoke or fire. I'm covering it with a blanket. I'm going to have a police escort in the front. I'm going to have an engine company behind it. I'm going to have an engine company behind it, ready to go, because if this catches fire between here and the tow location in this congested neighborhood, I'm going to have to put it out. And I have a firefighter riding in the passenger seat with a radio. So if the engine company behind the tow truck observes a fire condition that they want it to stop for, they can call them. And notice it's at the very end of the ramp, not near the cab. So this is another interesting one. This was in Bridgewater. This was not the cause of the fire. It was a victim of the fire. This electric car was being towed on a trailer. It completely consumed. It took thousands of gallons to put out. When they loaded it on the flatbed, it's probably the same exact truck. These are all the battery cells. They fell out of the car as they were loading it onto the truck. So now they stopped the whole operation. They ran and grabbed a roll-off dumpster, lifted the car with a, what's the turntable one? You know what I'm talking about. Rotator off the flatbed and into the dumpster because they were dropping thousands of batteries off the dump of the ramp. So another problem. If I don't have access to a roll-off dumpster, I could take one of those fire blankets and make a berm, so as the truck's stopping and starting or whatever, you're not dumping batteries off the back of it. But that's why when this thing leaves the scene, you want to have a police escort in the front and an engine in the back. So this type of condition, those are all those tiny cells, they're about as big as your thumb right there. They just fell out of the bottom of the car once it got put onto the back of the truck. So this is what it looks like going into the tow yard. Police escort, tow truck, car all wrapped up, and an engine company following. The nice thing about this, once that tow truck arrives at the lot, they get to see where the car is going, make sure it's isolated, make sure it's in the right place. In this case here, the fire blanket was never exposed to fire. We took it off the car, folded it up, put it back on the ladder company. And now it's on the tow lot with 50 feet around it, in all directions, nothing around it. And it had to sit there. Fire nozzle. Again, this battery compartment is designed to keep water out. It's designed to prevent all the snow and ice and everything from coming into the batteries. So are we applying water properly? No, but it's better than taking come-alongs and airbags and tipping the car on its side, trying to place 150 gallons a minute. Water needs to be applied directly to where it's to be. This nozzle, I think it's 70 gallons per minute. So cutting our runoff down by half, because 150 gallon per minute nozzle that's not hitting the batteries is putting 150 gallons a minute on the ground, and is actually not even are overheating. So it reduces runoff, and it's unmanned. You slide that underneath, everybody takes all their gear off and sits on the side for an hour. So what's in the future? Found this at a car dump. They have a old U-Haul body that they converted to hold EV batteries. It's hard to see in the light here. These are all EV batteries here that are about to either be recycled or whatever. So this junk is taking the batteries and then hold. Look at it. Industry, 10, 15, 20 years later, what's going to happen when these are out, right? So anytime you have one of these things hit a curb, hit a building, whatever it might be, there's no universally accepted tactic. You got to do what is smart. You got to do what you can do with the equipment and staffing you have. Plan on a long-term operation. This is going to go a couple hours. We're going to be here a couple hours. Figure out what you have to do in your own department to handle that. How are you going to get it from where it is to where it needs to be? Have that all put ahead. Do this before the fire occurs. Plan on a storage location. Where's it going to go? We can't have this towed. A lot of tow drivers will pick up a car, go home at 3 a.m., right? Sleep, wake up in the morning, then take the tow truck back to the work and then dump the car. They can't do that. That car has to go directly from the scene to the storage area. And number one, whatever you like about this or don't like about this, have your plan. Pick what you like out of what we did, have your plan, and figure out what's going to work for me. So we had to work with our police department. I've asked the marshal to speak to the colonel of the state police about how we can get these cars off the highway and figure out what is it we're going to do. Because every one of us comes from a different department, different geographical location, different setting, and different capabilities. Any questions on that? Actually, 2 questions, please. Do the round table. Next up, we're going to go to devices. All right, so next up is